Welcome to the Ultra Ascent Podcast. Your hosts, Alex Proctor and Mark Dowdle, are two aspiring professional runners with the goal to take you on a journey of making that dream a reality. You'll be given an inside look to what life is like as an unsponsored athlete and all the trials and tribulations that it entails. Along the way, they'll share how they train, what races and challenges are currently on their calendar, and how they aim to land support from brands. Alex intends to dominate in the professional trail running sector, taking souls and finishing on top the podium at the most premier trail races around the world, while Mark seeks to find new ways to discover the unknown and self-made, not yet accomplished ultra distance challenges. Let's get into the show.
We're back.
Episode 2.
Episode 2 on the Ultra Ascent Podcast.
Proc, before we get into anything, I do want to bring up something that might throw you off here. But I do want to get it on record because this is my favorite time of year for Minnesota Vikings fans because their expectations, your expectations right now are through the roof. 5-0, yeah. You're on bye week, you're thriving, but we all know what's in the inevitability of you guys coming crashing down, and it's going to be an NFC championship game or it's going to be a playoff game where one quarter at a time, you're going to just start to see Viking fans turn on their team in their city. So we can clip this out. When that does happen, I want to get your thoughts 5-0 on the bye week.
You know, there was a time where I had made the pact with myself and a bunch of other people that I wouldn't cut my hair. I've since done so, as you can tell, but I wouldn't cut my hair until the Vikings win the Super Bowl. Ended up having a wedding a few months ago that I felt like I needed to cut my hair for the pictures, so I did. But now that I have cut my hair, the Vikings are 5-0. I feel like there's something there. I feel like I might have broken the curse with that. There might have been like some combination of things that needed to happen for the Vikings to do it. And given how the season started, 5-0, face some pretty decent teams with a schedule now that seems pretty lackluster in terms of the competition. I feel like there's a good chance we make it to the playoffs, obviously. But from there,
so you're not committing to Super Bowl in mind right now.
Just wait.
Okay.
I think that if we can get through our division, the Lions are definitely a competitor that I'm a bit worried about. I think they just destroyed the Cowboys today, so they're in the power rankings. They're probably top 5 as well. I think if we can get through them, it'll prepare us pretty well those 2 games during the season for a playoff run. And here's what I'm predicting. I'm predicting that the Vikings will be in the Super Bowl this year against the Chiefs. And
this is great.
It's gonna be Vikings up by a few touchdowns at half, and then second half comes around, just the most obscene things the ball doesn't bounce the right way.
Yeah.
Pick sixes everywhere. Yep. And then by the time it's the
goal
fourth
line.
Yeah. Along the goal line. By the time it hits the fourth quarter, there's going to be a moment where Patrick Mahomes has the ball and the Vikings are up by a score, by a possession. Let's just say it's 3 points, 2 points. Let's just say it's 2 points for some reason. Yeah. It's where like they need to score.
It's 4th and 7.
Yeah, 4th and 7. There's going to be a pass interference that's called.
I was just thinking that too.
On the Vikings. And they're going to kick a field goal or score a touchdown immediately after and win their 3rd in a row. And the camera's going to pan to Taylor Swift, and then it's going to pan to a Vikings fan like this.
Yep.
And then I think the rest is history. I think the Vikings fans will go burrow up until the next season and then get hopeful with another pretty good start, and the cycle will continue.
Good.
Which is interesting because I was just thinking about this. I don't want to get too far into this, but for the record, like, just looking at like other franchises, I don't think like when I watch football games and I never, or any sport for that matter, this feeling that I have when I watch Minnesota sports is just different because I feel like there's always this like monkey on the back of something bad bound to happen to make it so that you are like intently disappointed. And it's just like, I don't know, I was born into this. I have really no choice. I'm not gonna run away from the fandom of what is Minnesota sports because I know I'm familiar with it now, but I just feel like they're like, I'm watching the Packers, like it doesn't seem like their games like go the way ours do. Like it's just like it's interesting from like, I guess, your perspective. I know that you're not really a sports fan like too much to that matter, but like when you like watch sport games or like say you're a fan of the Bears, like would you, if you were like, I don't think you would feel like that feeling because it's like the Vikings are always expected to do well in some way, but then it always is like there's these unfortunate circumstances that come around. But I don't want to get into too much. I think they're going to the Super Bowl. The Chiefs are going to win on a unfortunate no call or call.
So it all. I before we move on, I do have a perspective on this, and I understand where Vikings fans and Minnesota sports fans, I understand how they came to this monkey on the back conclusion, but I do think it's a psychological disorder that your city and your culture needs to figure out, because I'll give you an example. I don't remember what baseball team it was, but it was last season where one of their star players, let's say it was like the Braves, one of their star players was in a slump for months, and he just started getting booed every single time. And one of the diehard fans he has a following on social media, he said, instead of booing this guy, let's just change the environment of when he gets to the plate and give him a standing ovation. And so they gave him a standing ovation every time he was up, and he went right back, and he started to get on a better trajectory. So I do think that when you can feel it in the air when Vikings fans, there's almost like an expectation that they're going to F it up. And I think when you put that energy out there, you're just creating space for it to happen. But
yes,
we're here nor there. So you weren't watching the Vikings this weekend because it was bye weekend. What were you doing this weekend? So you were running with Coach Hayden?
Yep, a few things. So met up with my coach Hayden Hawks, with Hawks Running, this Saturday morning. He had hit me up and let me know that he was going to be up in the Salt Lake area. He currently lives about 3.5 hours south in Cedar City, Utah. It's more deserty, higher in altitude. He's from that area, I believe. So where a lot of his family is, but he was up here visiting some more family, and he hit me up, and we went for a nice run in Draper, Utah, in like the Corner Canyon area. Super nice, super good access to trails. A lot of mountain bikers, which is a bit hard when you're on foot. You have to move over a lot, but so he's been my coach for about two-ish months now, maybe 2.5, almost 3. And we started working together after I had, I'd say, a poor result, or a result that I wasn't happy with this summer at my 100K race, the Never Summer 100K. I fell victim to altitude sickness at around mile 50. Don't think I was prepared to handle that, so ended up walking it in. Let him know after that I was looking for a coach and wanted to take this more seriously for my race in about 2 months after that. I think it was about 2 months, to get realigned and to be better prepared to handle the task at hand there. And we had a phone call while he was in Europe tapering, I believe it's for UTMB. He was traveling in Europe and preparing for that, and he took the time to, lay down like his expectations for me and our relationship and what to expect. And I was like, yeah, I'm in. Like, you've got this, loving care for your athletes that I've seen firsthand. I'd met him earlier this year in May while I was while I was crewing a friend at the Bryce Canyon 100 miler, and coincidentally, he was crewing a friend on the 50 miler, and the course so happened to line up for the first loop. So we'd go aid station to aid station, and I had just started talking to him and his buddy Damon, and it was really cool because I'd been a fan of his for quite some time, and I knew how much he had done for this sport and how many things that he had accomplished, and it was just cool to like see him serve his friend the way he did and coach the way he did, because there was another athlete that he had that was actually my friend's race that was competing against my friend almost right next to each other, and he kind of took it upon himself, even though he had no obligation to like help this guy's family out and crew him and hype him up and coach him as the race was going on, while he's simultaneously crewing his friend out there too, that that's what he signed up for. So it's cool to see that in person. It kind of planted the seed of like, I want a coach that cares about me like this much, a coach that is willing to step between the lines and kind of like step in when you need to, almost like a coach, like a basketball coach or a football coach, where it's just not like it's a relationship right now where it's virtual, but when the time comes when you're in person, like they're there to step in and grab the clipboard or do whatever they needed to do to put you in a position to succeed. So I thought that was really cool. I hit him up, and he's been coaching me ever since. Prior to that, I was uncoached for, I believe, about a year. I had been coached for a few of my marathons, and then I decided to go separate ways just because I'd moved up to Colorado, couldn't really afford the coach anymore. Prior, I was living on my own, or living with my parents, so I had the income left to put towards that. But now I decided that I want to take it to a more serious level where I have someone else looking at my training, someone else going through, and I'm able to bounce ideas with. I think it's important for me, when I was looking for a coach, to know that they had done something or accomplished something that I want to. Sure. So they've done it before. They can bring that experience to the table and that expertise. And I know from what I've seen and heard and experienced with Hayden that he takes the small things really seriously and leaves no stone unturned. And that he's an open book, mostly, I think, with his training and his philosophies, which is really cool and something that I find inspiring and want us to be able to do when we're talking to future generations. Like he's been a good steward for the sport and laying a path for the next generation of trail runners, which I think kind of ties into what this podcast's intention is. Like for our viewers, like we want to lay the groundwork for you guys. If you're listening, if you want to be a professional athlete or a sponsored athlete or someone that wants to do this for your life, it's your passion. Like we want to be there to lay that groundwork and kind of go through the trenches first, and figure things out for you so that you have an easier time to do it yourself. And he's kind of doing that on the professional trail running side, which I think is really cool. So I wanted to, get under his training, and so far so good. It's been awesome. He's been flexible with me, and he realizes that like it's important that you show up to a start line, most importantly, healthy and feeling good, and knowing that you did all you can at the point where the race starts. So
it sounded
awesome so far.
It sounded like he had some expertise that you were looking for in the sport, and you wanted to basically get your hands on that information so you could progress in this sport.
Yes.
I don't have a coach, and this is something I've always been curious about, and the viewers might be as well. Is like, what does that look like? Like, do you guys, he gives you a plan and then you hop on a call once a week? Like, what does that look like from now that you're in training mode for a race, leading up to the race, during the race, post-race? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, so on a week-to-week basis, he gives me a training plan for the week, and it, no matter like how I'm feeling or like what I want to do, I kind of look at that as a baseline of what I like, a framework almost, and with that, I tend to bounce around a little bit. I don't stick exactly to it. I kind of, he knows that the athletes know their body best, their mind best. Right. He's separate from us. He's not living with us. He doesn't know exactly how we're feeling. He's just kind of doing the best he can based on like what he's seen, what he's hearing from me. So right now, I guess to get specifically as an example, I'm building towards the Black Canyon 100K in February. So for the first 4 weeks, we're working on building up our base mileage, our base, starting from square one, kind of. It's a little easier now that I've had some experience and gotten some mileage under my legs in the past, so I can kind of accelerate that process with a new block. So he gives me the week plan.
Does that include lifting too?
Yes. So this block did. In the block prior, it was too close to the race to incorporate that from his perspective, and it would be a new stimulus that we didn't really want to hit on that close. We did do some hip work, some core work, some mobility work that did get me more fired up than I thought it would. My body more fired up, but it was different movements that helped me prepare my body for the force that I was going to be impacted with on the 100-mile race. So now I'm still doing that protocol, that hip core balance protocol. And this week I actually incorporated a strength session for the first time in I don't know how long. It's been too long, and it was a leg day, and there were some movements that I hadn't done before, so I took it lighter than usual, and I got humbled pretty well in the days following. I was pretty sore. I did some reverse deadlifts, some overhead squats, and my shoulder mobility from baseball is absolutely horrendous. So I put the bar up with no weight for the first time, and I go down for the squat, and I just hear a pop in my shoulder. I'm like, oh no, here we go. So I grabbed like a dumbbell. But yeah, so we're incorporating strength as well. But if there's anything I ever need from him, he's been super responsive to texts. He sends voice memos if he's, running around doing something. And it's cool to be able to hear that. And he's always answering, like, if I send him like a long message or a paragraph, he tries to address everything I say in there, even if like I'm sending him some stuff that like I don't even care if he hears or not. I'm just kind of just sending him like, yeah, not really feeling good. Feel like I got maybe like a stomach bug or something. Just like, taking it day by day. And then he's like, he tries to come up with something that's helpful, even though like I don't really need him to. Like it's nice that
you're just more venting about it. Yeah.
Yes, I'm more venting about it. And if if you ever need to talk on the phone, he's open a phone call whenever, which is nice because with his situation, and this is another thing that I found kind of important too when I was looking for a coach. And I guess this is something to consider if you're looking for a coach out there as a listener, is that he doesn't have a full-time regular job, so he can kind of commit a lot of his time outside of running and with his family to his coaching, which is, I think given probably his income, different the way he's, paid from running, like it might be a side hustle, but like he really cares and can commit a lot of his time and energy to it. If you have a coach, which I'm not saying is a negative thing, like I might be a coach someday with a full-time job and trying to be a professional ultra runner. So I understand like that can be manageable. But like if you have a coach that's able to do that, I think that it's easier for them to go the extra mile for you. When there's so much like cortisol in their lives and so much other stressors and, other athletes that they need to bring attention to, I feel like it might be hard for you not to somehow get left out in some way. And that's kind of how I felt with a previous coach I had, no knock on him, but I think that there was a certain point where he had too much responsibility and too many athletes and too much, work on the other side of coaching, along with balancing family and everything else in life, that I just don't think he had the time to give me like exactly what I was looking for. And in this situation, I feel like I am getting like what I'm paying for and some. Hayden, don't take that as if you're listening to this, don't take that as a sign to bump up my cost, because I don't know if I can afford that. But I think I'm getting the value from it. So in a way, I guess maybe lucky, because it's, some coaches, you don't know what you're getting yourself into. But I did the research. I looked into like different coaching options, and for what Hayden's able to provide, I think it's awesome so far. So
I mean, it's cool, because it sounds like the difference is how much they're willing to look at the details and take you on a one-by-one athlete basis. Like, how much can they personalize it and focus on like the small thing, like you said, of just saying like, I have a stomach bug. It might have been small to you, but to him it sounds like, well, let me try and work with him on this. Like, he expressed
here's some different things that you could try.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I'm like I was like, dude, you don't have to like I was just saying that just to say it, honestly, but it was cool. And
that's good.
I don't think it's necessary to have a coach to be successful as a runner. Definitely not. I mean, there's many examples where athletes go uncoached and have success. Courtney Dauwalter, Jim Walmsley, some of the best athletes in the world aren't coached. They do it themselves, and they go off their feel and what they learn and take from the resources that they have. But for me, I think that it's nice to know exactly what I'm supposed to do for the week and kind of align my schedule based on that, and prioritize, what needs to be done in my running along with like the other things. It's kind of hard to go into a day not knowing exactly what you need to do and going based off just feel. Because then you have like some uncertainty and doubt that, in the back of your head, that you might be doing too much, too little, the wrong thing. Like here, like, I don't think I would have done as well at the Grindstone 100 2 months after I had a terrible result at the 100K without Hayden's guidance and help in that preparation. Even though, we had a little build up, a little time to do so, he was able to dial me in and provide me with some different workouts to get some stimulus that I hadn't had before, and gave me the confidence, in particular, to run uphill like I never had before. At the Never Summer 100K, I was getting passed by 20, 25 runners on, a 2 to 3 mile climb, and I would descend and pass them all again, and it would be a cycle every single climb. And it was just frustrating, all these people with these huge calves just bustling, hiking by me as I'm like 180 heart rate. And I'm like, what am I doing wrong here? I know I'm at 10,000 feet altitude. Like, that's a factor, but why aren't these people affected by it? Or why are these people faster than me? So like, I don't think I was tapping into workouts uphill. And I think Hayden addressed that right away. And we went to the drawing board and figured out, like, we need to be doing some uphill intervals. We need to be changing gears. We need to be working on like making sure that your running economy when you're running up these uphills is better than it was before. Otherwise, you're going to have the same problems. And I didn't get passed once at Grindstone at all. And I think that was a big testament to like what we had done in those 2 months, because I had gone from like 37th and walking it in to a third place at a UTMB World Series race in a matter of 2 months. So there's a lot of things there that contributed, but I think that, the coaching definitely helped, and something that like I would recommend, at least like for the listeners, if you're thinking about it, to look into it and to consider it. I know it's quite the investment for some people. Like, you're paying $150, $200 a month, in some cases $250 for a coach. So go into it, make sure you have the phone call with them and talk to them about like what your expectations are. Get the lowdown on what they expect from you as the athlete, and really try to figure out if this relationship is going to be good for you going forward, because it is a business for them, but it's also something where like you can build a relationship that goes outside the coaching. Like Hayden now, like I consider him a coach, but I also consider him like a friend, so I think that's something to consider as well. I think having that relationship.
I would say also, as the athlete, be able to identify the problems where you think, and this is probably a theme that will come up a couple times throughout this episode, is like, be able to identify the things that you need help with so that you can clearly communicate to them so that they can offer their service in the best possible way to you.
Exactly. Yes. I think that's the most important part, and the thing that Hayden kind of hammered home on our intro call before I'd even hired him is that, like, you're not going to get anything from this if you don't communicate with me at all. Like, you need to be the one to say, like, how the effort felt, how you're feeling, what worked, what didn't, because he can't he can read into the data and see, like, where my heart rate was, what my paces were.
Right.
But there's a whole nother world out there that needs to be communicated for you to get the value that you're paying for. You know, like, a coach can't read your mind. Like, a coach needs something to go off of to help you out. And yeah, I think that's super important, the communication aspect. And, like, they're not going to be annoyed if, you know, you're reaching out. They know, like, you're hiring them so that you can become a better athlete, you know, and they'll respect it. And especially the coaches that care about the details and the small things, like, they'll respect and think that, you know, want to be, like, a dignified athlete if you're reaching out for things like that. Like, I'm reaching out just to figure out, like, carbs per hour, like, sleep, nutrition type things, because I know, like, he's got some of that stuff dialed in that contributes to how successful he's at races, you know, the little things that count. So yeah. The
coaching aspect has always intrigued me because, like I said, I don't have a coach, and I was thinking about that on my run today because I saw that you put that topic in there, and I thought about who is my coach. Because when I look at, you said earlier, it's like, instead of you just going based off feel, you're going off of more of like a schedule or a plan that you know has proven success.
Yeah.
And I feel go ahead.
Yeah, and it's periodized so that you feel your best when you need to feel your best. Right. And I think that's one of the most important things, because you can do all this training and get to race day and, you know, maybe you didn't get the stimulus you needed or not feel the best. But the way that Hayden at least has laid out the plan, he's built in, like, separate blocks or weeks that, like, we're working on specific things to get a certain stimulus so that when race day comes, like, we can combine all of that to, you know, to make sure that I'm in a position to succeed. And it's hard to do that on your own. It's hard. Like, you can do it, but it's hard unless you've done it before.
Right. And that's where it's like, it's different depending on whether you're going out and you're doing it for a specific race or what type of race. Like, all those variables get added in to how your training is going to be different. Where I come in on my side of things, it's like it sounded like you too, like, it doesn't work for me trying to go out based on feel. I saw that Courtney Dauwalter, she does do that, where she just, like, allegedly, she's not going out and be like, all right, I'm going to go 2 miles today. Her based on feel is like, I'm either doing 15 or I'm doing 30, you know?
Yeah.
There's a difference in that. But that's why I got back into Calendar Club for the month of October, because for September, I just went out running based on how I felt. And there were way too many days where I got, you know, I was doing editing or doing other things where it was deprioritized. And I have started to see Calendar Club as my coach because I know what to expect. I don't have to think about how many miles I'm going to run today. I know it's already written out for me, and the rest will take care of itself. And I've had that proven success at Wausau or, running to Chicago, where it's like, I know I can use this as my training plan, and it's going to, have success on game day for the races that I'm doing, at least.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And I guess with the coach thing, like, they can help you get down, like, the specificity you need if you want it, like, on your own, I feel like it's a bit harder to get that specificity in. You kind of have to have that intuition
Yeah.
and that natural feel that if you're inexperienced or kind of starting out like we are, that you might not necessarily have as strong as you'd want. So like, I think what we're going to be doing once I get closer to this Black Canyon 100K race, since it is like a deserty, more flat, rolling single track type trails, that I'm going to be trying to run on more of that. I'm going to be trying to do more of my workouts on the similar terrain to get specific so that my body's comfortable with that stimulus and that it feels, like second nature. Shout out to that podcast, by the way.
So you're dialing in all of the things, whether it's nutrition, trail, you're dialing all those things starting now as it leads into Black Canyon. Because like you said,
no, I'm not doing that. So I'm dialing in a few of those factors now. But for these next 4 or 5 weeks, the goal is just to get my base volume, mileage, and my comfort up, and to get some turnover in my legs because this race is gonna be fast, but not as specific yet, because you don't necessarily want to be specific too far out, because then there's some other things that you might be missing on there, like umbrella things. Like this race doesn't have much vert. It's not mountainous. It's in the desert in Arizona. So I don't necessarily need to get all that vert in, but I think, and this is something that I, from my perspective, think is important that Hayden hasn't really talked about, because he, as a coach, he's trusted me to, at this point, get in the right amount of elevation gain on the trail that I find is good for me or feels good. So my philosophy right now is that I want to get in a good amount of vert in this base 4 to 5 weeks, so that I can, my legs, with all the ascending and descending, you're kind of tearing your legs up, and there's a lot of carnage that is had. But after the repeated bouts of doing that, I feel much stronger afterward. And an example that I can think of that has kind of, cemented that so far as being true is that I did a half marathon and I PR'd this year off of strictly trail running and doing a bunch of vert by quite a bit. And I hadn't really done any road stuff, hadn't really done many track workouts at all. But given that a lot more of my muscles were incorporated in my training and developed, I felt like the downhills, uphills weren't affected by me. It was just that I had the aerobic capacity to succeed there. So, I guess that's part of my philosophy and why I'm doing exactly what I'm doing right now, and why it's not as specific. But as we get closer to race day, Hayden will dial it in more to make sure that I'm almost funneling into exactly where I need to be right now.
So we're both kind of in, I know you just finished your first week. I'm kind of in entering the third week of my training. What differences are you noticing now being in training mode that are different than, not?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and I'm glad you asked it. And I'd like to get your feedback on how you're feeling too, because I know that things are starting to ramp up on your mileages it's gonna be double digits from here on out, and you're gonna be left with a lot less time and energy. And for me, I had a few weeks or so of, I'd say pretty, I don't know. For me, I'd say it was pretty degenerate. I'm used to moving a lot, doing a lot of different things. And I think that there's a time and place for degeneracy, and it's hard for me to characterize it as that, because, I'm resting, I'm walking a lot, being more of aloof, but it's rebuilding my energy levels, because there's a few weeks where I just wasn't feeling like myself. I had that huge stimulus at the 100-mile race, and I needed to, recover. So I took those few weeks, and now that I'm bouncing back into training, I had the energy at the start of the week. And now on this Sunday, I'm feeling pretty worn down. That stimulus hits you back like a ton of bricks, and I know that I'll push through it, and that I'll, after time and this, 3 to 4 week little block here of volume building and base building, that I'll be good to go. But there's definitely a period of time where it's uncomfortable, and like today, I didn't even want to go to run. I was supposed to get 60 to 75 minutes in of just easy trail running, and I got, 40, 45, and I shut it down because I was just feeling out of it, feeling so fatigued and not ready to keep going. So like there's times where you kind of have to listen to your body, but there's also times where you just need to get yourself out the door and do it. Because I think that's an important thing too. And another topic that we can touch on is just like getting out and running, and just for the consistency aspect, because that will get you a lot further in the long run than say like maybe you're on the verge of, being too fatigued or overtraining, but the fact that you were consistent and you showed up for a half mile or a mile that day, like that will pay dividends later. In not only your confidence in yourself to be able to like pull off things that are hard, but just the fact that you can like string this like strand throughout your training that continued and, was meaningful. So
that is the biggest thing that I've noticed, and to like drill down on that, like the difference between motivation and consistency, that is a thing that I've noticed more than anything as far as getting back into training. It's like the fleeting feeling of motivation, like I'm probably not motivated to go out and run 85% of the time.
Yeah.
As much as I love doing it and I love the benefits and I love just all the lessons that I learned from it, it is hard to strap on the shoes knowing that you got 2 hours or 3 hours outside.
Yes.
And, these last couple of weeks, I've noticed a change in my attitude and perspective of understanding that the consistency is the thing that is constant. It's in the name. And what is important about consistency is when you're showing up, particularly on the days that you don't want to. And we've all been there. We've all been there, whether you've run a half marathon, your first 5K, or 100K, or any of the races that we do, there will be times throughout that race where you're not going to feel 100%, or you're going to question whether you should take another step, or, you just don't feel confident enough to take that next step. And what builds that confidence is the consistency that you build in your training and that you put yourself through. Because I tell you what, when you go out and you do a run, whether it is the 45 minutes that you did today and you're like, that didn't feel the best, you still did it. Yeah. And you learned how you talk to yourself and how you make excuses in your mind, and all of those negative thoughts that come into play. You learn how to communicate with those internally and deal with those. And I like to think about it as like, I know in culture today, we talk a lot about men being able to like identify and feel their feelings and feel their emotional state. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that once you've set a goal, you have to understand that there will be times where you're just not going to want to do it, and you're just going to have to do it anyway. And when you look at the day-to-day emotions, that's where the value comes in. It's like, if you can learn to work through that when you're in training, you're building that muscle where you're going to be able to do it on race day.
Yeah, exactly. And like to build on that, like what are some thoughts that like go through your head when you don't want to do it? And when you start out, like what are you thinking to yourself when you get going and you're like what are you thinking? I don't want to put any thoughts in your head now, but
yeah. I go right to disassociating or trying to, like, as much as this is the one thing, like I try and make as much content as possible when I'm on my runs, but having the phone with me can easily turn to, I'm 5 miles into my run, I am not feeling good, I'm going to pull out my phone and sit on a bench and just like sit there for 5 minutes and scroll
Yeah.
and just be like, God, this sucks. And then at a certain point, I have to like snap out of it and be like, the longer I sit here and sulk and feel sorry for myself, the longer I'm going to be out here. Like, I know I came out here to get a job done. And yeah, I don't know. Like, my brain, what's funny is as much as I've done and as much as I have pushed through and accomplished, that thought of wanting to seek comfort when I'm uncomfortable and I am like, all those things are coming up, my brain still goes to, how do I get out of this?
It's always there.
It's
Yeah,
always there.
it's always there. No matter how hard or how staying hard you are, or how many logs you're carrying or boats you're carrying, like that feeling of wanting to seek comfort when you're in that discomfort mode is always going to be there. And what helps when, like, say that you're feeling that comfort or feeling that discomfort and you want to be comfortable, what helps is like knowing that you've been in that position before.
Yeah.
So the only way to do that is to continue
Yeah.
getting out of that position.
And understanding that is that's the lesson of the day's run. You know, like
Yeah.
that is the lesson right there.
Exactly.
And
Exactly. Because we all feel it. Like
Yeah.
we run more than the average person, and we love it, and it's something that we want to do for the rest of our lives, and we still feel it, and we still don't want to run, you know, at some or don't want to do something at a
Right.
certain point.
Well, and I talked about this yesterday, like the importance of having accountability, whether that's from Coach Hayden or from a group of friends. Even David Goggins has someone holding him accountable that's outside of himself. He talks about this. He's talked about this in podcasts, but the person holding him accountable is God, because he's talked about he doesn't want to get to the end of his life, go see the big man upstairs, and the big man upstairs shows him all of the things that he could have done if he were to hold himself to a higher standard. So everybody has someone, whether that's a friend, a family member, or God above, that is holding them to a higher standard. And you just got to find that person for you.
Exactly. And I think that could lead into our next topic in a funny way, because I think it's important to, you know, to have that community and to build it. And in some ways, like, to find these people and to figure out who your community is or where your community is, sometimes you have to cold DM.
Yeah.
And you have to cold message, and you have to cold email. And I guess that's something that you could lead it with if you'd want, and
Yeah.
how that we've done so, you know, in our own personal journeys, and how that's led us to meeting some people that, you know, we've experienced some cool things with.
Yeah. There's a story. So you could find it in a friend. You could find it in somebody that you want to be mentored by. You could find it in just trying to reach out to people that are in your area that you want to run with. It doesn't matter. The example I have of like a cold DM or email or something that got my foot in the door with someone that I admire and want to be, you know, I want to learn from, is the Iron Cowboy. And I think we talked about it on the last podcast, but
Yeah.
if not, his most recent accomplishment was 100 consecutive Ironman triathlons in 100 days. And I'll embed the video in here. I sent him a cold DM when I was working for the Cold Brew Company, and I was on the road traveling as a salesperson. I had shown up to his day 50 because he had opened it up to the community. Anybody could show up and do the full triathlon that day. And this was like 6 months later, where I was back in Utah, and I wanted to meet him. I wanted to get advice from him. And so I sent him a video message that was super unique. It was really quirky and weird, but it was essentially just like a 60-second video of me, you know, doing handstands and weird stuff. And I just said, hey, you inspired me to do the things I'm doing today. Here's some of the things that I'm doing. And because of that, you have set me on this new path and this new direction of wanting to be someone like you in the future. And he responded to it. and we ended up getting lunch later in the week when I was in Provo. And the first thing he said to me, well, the last thing he said to me was the only reason he took this lunch is because the video I sent. He says he gets DMs all the time of people just like writing out a paragraph or writing something, and it just gets lost. And the reason that mine stood out is because it was done in such a unique way that it just rose above the rest of the messages. But the first thing he said to me when we sat down was, I hope you're not looking for the answer from me, because I have no answers for you. He was like, all the work is going to be on your part, and you better be ready to be in this for a decade before you see any real results. And that is what I needed to hear, and what I ultimately wanted to hear was the answer is always going to be put on you, the individual, where if you have a vision for where you want to go, you can reach out and get help. Like Hayden, your coach, a perfect example of someone who is mentoring you, guiding you. But at the end of the day, you're the one that has to run all those miles. And he can't do that for you. So I have stayed in touch with Iron Cowboy from time to time. I'll send him a DM, I'll send him a video message, and he'll get back to me, which is cool. And that relationship, although it's not like a friendship or a mentorship, the fact that, you know, I can reach out to him and he can respond and he knows what I'm doing. And he has, you know, during the Calendar Club when I was in Utah for a bachelor trip, and it was February, and I was doing
you're in this Utah all this time, man.
I know. But I was doing the double down challenge of a full month of Calendar Club outside and a full month on treadmill. He's like, you're effing psycho. Like and so like that was cool for me to hear that this guy I looked up to thought something I was doing was madness. So that's my example I wanted to give of like, you have to be willing to reach out, and you have to be willing to do it in a way that's unique to you, the individual, but a way that will kind of rise above the other messages. I don't know what.
Yes.
Do you have something?
Yeah, and I'd say that mine, like my example that I'll bring to the table, since you chose one that's, you know, someone that might be a bit harder to reach, or someone that in some cases could be unreachable to certain people, or you know. I'm not going to DM Courtney DeWalter and expect a response from her any way. But for my example, I'm going to call on a few times that I have, since I've moved to Utah. Natalie and I moved here knowing basically zero people. We had a few friends, or a friend from high school that I knew that we've gotten dinner with. But other than that, we basically knew no one. So I DM'd a few people, Trails with Zach, Abby Store with the 8 Lane podcast.
Shout out.
Shout out to them. And before I'd even got here, given the conversations that we were having over DM, it seemed like they were already looking forward to meeting Natalie and I, which is cool because we had never talked on the phone. We had just, you know, they had seen what I was about based on the content I had put out and who I was based on that. But they'd never heard my voice in person. They'd never had a conversation with me over like the phone. So I feel like based on the way that you portray yourself on social media, I think is very important for relationship building. If you don't know people in your area, and you're having trouble connecting with them organically, just on the street running, I think it's important to do your best at putting yourself out there in a way that's true to you and is genuine. And I think that I've done a decent enough job that people, you know, when I DM them, they get back to me because they know that like I have good intentions and that I'm just looking for friends that also want to run or also want to get together and share some, you know, good life experiences and memories. And I guess since I've been here, I've, you know, DM'd 5 to 10 people, and all of them now I consider like friends that I would hit up to go run with. And it's something that, like, if you're new to an area, or if you're just looking for new friends in general and somewhere that you've been for a while, I consider, if there's someone that you've seen on social media that you would, consider someone, like, maybe, like, I don't know, someone that you could see yourself being friends with, like, it doesn't hurt to send a message. The worst thing they do is block you, never hear from them again, and it doesn't take much, honestly. Like, if I was to be DM'd by someone, like, I would just get a message. I would just expect to, like, say, like, oh, like, I'm looking for a friend. Like, I see that you're an ultra runner. You like to hit the trails. Like, do you want to hit the trail sometime? And dude, I'm in. Like, I'll meet you anywhere, anytime. Like, let's do it. Because it's the fact that you took the time to reach out and look into who I was, matters to me, and shows me that you at least care enough to do that. And I think that goes a long way.
Yeah. And I mean, running is such a solo endeavor. Like, you spend so
Exactly.
much time alone. So we're all looking for some form of team, some form of, like, sharing the trails together. And I think what you said of you putting out those messages beforehand and laying the groundwork, gives the opportunity for those positive interactions before you even meet.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really important. And it's important to have something, because once you DM them, the first thing they're going to do is go to your profile and see what type of content. They're going to get an idea of who you are. And I think that leads nicely into the running event in Austin that you're considering going to. And we talked a little bit before the show about identifying sponsors to connect with and laying the groundwork beforehand. So can you talk a little bit about that? I know you're undecided whether or not you're going or not, but maybe talk about some of the advice you got of, like, if you're going to this event, if you're looking to get sponsored, what are some of the things that you're going to for sure do to put yourself in the best situation for that to happen?
Yeah. So I got this advice from my friend Finn. I don't want to totally out him for it, because I think it's a good, I don't know if he'd want everyone to hear this from him exactly, but my friend Finn, I let him know that, I was looking for a role or a job in the running industry, or I wanted to be more involved in the running industry in some way. And I felt like being aligned with a brand that I liked was the way to go. So he told me that the running event, and it's something that I had kind of had seeds or inklings of prior to this, of possibly going to and figuring things out, but I didn't really have a sense of direction. And funny enough, he suggested that I go to this, if I had the money to do so, and, write down a list of 5 to 10 different brands that I was interested in, either working with in, like, a sponsorship aspect or working for, and to do my due diligence in researching them, what their brand's about, the marketing folks or sales folks that could potentially be at this convention, try to connect with them beforehand, get the lowdown on who they are, what they enjoy, what they like, and then identify problems or value that you could add, or solve, if it was problem, solve, for the brand, or bring different solutions to the table for them at this event, and lay out what they could expect from you if you were to work with them. And given that all these brands, it's like every running brand that you can think of in the running industry is at this running event in Austin. Given that they're all there, it's a good way to get that face-to-face, that handshake, that look in the eye from them. They wouldn't be able to really deny you from a conversation in some ways. So it's a bit easier if you're comfortable with that in-person conversation than a cold DM or a cold message, because they can't just ignore it, or it won't go to their junk email box. You're there, you're putting yourself out there, you're showing them that you literally would go the extra miles, the extra $1,000 it would take to do this and commit to this, and to show up and do your due diligence. I think that's important. Like, you have to do your research. You have to know what you're going to be doing. You can't, I mean, unless you're totally gifted and have a silver tongue. But I think it's important you do your research. And my goal is to come away with a better understanding of what I guess the expectations are in the running industry for, sponsorships, what, these brands would like to see in terms of experience, and what you can bring to the table. But I guess in the meantime, I'm going to do as much as I can to make sure that I can leave my mark with some people, and that I've, shown them that I can be an asset to them, to a brand, because I love running. I love the gear. I love everything about it. So
2 things you said there. One is there's a great podcast, the Second Nature podcast with Dylan Bauman, and I'm trying to look for, Aaron Lutz, where they talk about getting sponsored. They dive deep into what it looks like, what brands are looking for. And something that I think you and I both found is brands aren't just going to sponsor you because you're an athlete. Like, they're not just good because you do cool things, you win races. They're going to sponsor you. That might be an aspect to why they sponsor you, but there's still going to be, like, how do you show up for the brand? What value do you bring to the brand? What problems are you solving for the brand? So getting real clear on those. And then I know Jesse Itzler talked about this of, like, even if you do send an email or a LinkedIn message or a DM and they don't see it, they don't respond, the fact that you sent that's something that you can bring into the conversation that automatically opens up the door. So when you see them in person, you can just reference, hey, I sent you a DM, didn't look like you saw it, but you have that reference point where they'll go back and look at it, or at the very least, they know that you were reaching out to them in advance. So it just lays that groundwork. The other thing you said, and I don't know if there's anything more you want to say, but you said if you have the funds. So do you want to talk a little bit about our unemployment life?
Yeah, that's a good segue. And I think we'd mentioned in the last episode as like the first thing, but we're both currently unemployed, so not much coming in, and probably more coming out of our bank accounts. So
yeah.
I guess to start with that, I think it's cool that we're starting from here, knowing where we believe we will be, because we're starting, from scratch. We're starting from an area where we're not making, an income that's much. We're unemployed. So I think that's a thread that I want to continue throughout this podcast and this series, is that, like, I want to have transparency with all the listeners and for you guys to know about our situations, because I feel like it's not really talked about enough in how a lot of these, like, athletes or professionals are funding certain things. And I always find myself curious about that. And I'd like to know, because it's interesting to me, like, how people get it done and how people financially can afford things. And, right now, my wife, she has a full-time job, so she helps support us more than anything right now. She, pays for most things. She helps support us. And, I have a decent savings that we can rely on for certain things. But it's not going to pay our rent every month. So, right. I'm lucky in that. And I really, am very grateful for that situation. And I know that, most people, if they're in my situation, they won't find themselves, that fortunate. So I'm very grateful for that. And, like, I'm working my tail off, my butt off right now to, put myself in a position where I can help more, and I can, find an opportunity that's not only provides for us financially, but also doesn't weigh on us in a stressful way, a way that, an opportunity that aligns with my passions and that I could see myself being successful in, which is is hard. And in this, I guess the running industry, it's, opportunities are kind of few and far between and highly competitive. A lot of people want those opportunities, but I'm very persistent and I do my due diligence, and I know that I can, I'm able to communicate, different marketing things or different sales things, with shoes, with gear that I think could be a huge asset to brands. So I'm holding out hope, and I have a positive attitude towards where I'm going, but currently it is a bit uncomfortable. There is some discomfort there. You don't know, you have to hold your money a little bit closer nowadays. I can't spend money on kombucha every day or, buy the snacks that I want. It's, we're eating ground beef and rice for lunch and dinner, and we're eating eggs and rice for breakfast. And that's just the way it is. I mean, we do that anyway, but I'm being over dramatic because we literally do that anyway. But
like, you've been eating that for years.
Yeah, no, I know. So I'm getting a little dramatic, but it's not honestly that bad in my situation. It's just, I guess, I want our audience to know like where we stand and like, where we think we're going.
Yeah.
So
and on my end of things, I left my full-time job in February. Or I'd say March. It was the first week of March where I was cut loose, and I was unemployed until I'd say June, because June is when I got monetized on YouTube. So I guess that would be my official going from unemployed to self-employed. But I was looking at my revenue from the last 5 or 6 months. I've made $1,500 from YouTube content, and big surprise, that's not something to live off of. You can't make $1,500 in a 6-month period and expect to live comfortably or at all. So I had savings that I've ran through at this point, and I'm making a transition period now where I'll be doing some odd jobs to help sustain the other holes that aren't being fulfilled completely by the YouTube, and I don't have any official sponsors right now, so I'm not making money from running outside of YouTube. So yeah, I mean, I'm Yoakum's uncle. I'll be working for him tomorrow morning, and that's
let's go at the convention center or what?
Setting up and taking down events at the Minneapolis Convention Center.
I did that. It's a good gig, honestly. I mean,
okay. Jeff told me to bring a basic tool set. Did he tell you that?
Yes.
What did you bring?
I didn't. He had a backup plan for me. So he can make do. He's dealt with a lot less than you have to offer. Okay. So you're not necessarily in a bad position if you don't bring anything. I have like a hammer and a wrench and. Oh yeah, I mean, if you can bring that stuff, like it's helpful, and I mean, it shows that you want to be there and like care. So I think that's important. Yeah. But like he's fielding guys that don't have anything either, so he'll have some stuff for you. He'll be able to scrap it together. But it's nice because with his gig, it's pretty flexible. It doesn't take much thought at all. It's just basically like he needs it's just manual labor. It's manual labor. Yeah. So you just need to be able to follow directions like a Lego set, like a big Lego set, and set up like booths at a convention center, like the running event. So well, it's great because in college, I worked for facilities on campus. Yeah. I worked there for 2.5 years, and a lot of that job was setting up events on campus and putting together these, jigsaw stages and it's very similar to that. And I worked with the cold brew company. We went to events where we had to set up booths and stuff like that. Easy. So it's not completely foreign territory, but it's good to know that you've done it and that I can go in with a little bit of a clear mind. And then I signed up to be a youth sports and high school sports official. So I'll be reffing basketball games. And those are great because they're two jobs that pay decent for the hour, right? I make $50 a game for an hour game, and they're flexible. Like I can change my running schedule based on
that, and I'm not taking that work home. That's manual labor where I just go in, do the job, and I leave. So, yeah, I mean, I thought that, I'm glad you put that in there because I think it's important for the listeners to know that we're at the bottom working our way to the top.
Yes.
So we'll be looking for sponsors individually, but I think also for the show. And I think we should try and get Lando and his it's not insurance, it's accounting. Right?
Yeah.
I know the last anti-run club that he came to, he was talking about potentially sponsoring some of the things that we're doing. Like, this wasn't even in the works, so I was like, he'd be great for.
That'd be awesome. That'd be cool.
Brandon. Yeah.
Heck yeah. I mean, taxes are important. I mean, it's going to get even more complicated with us and different revenue streams, I assume, down the line. So I think it'd be important to have a good accountant that knows what he's doing and has a cute puppy too. So,
well, that's the name of what's his dog? Mojo. Yeah, that's the name of his company.
That's cool. That's awesome. I think that'd be hilarious and cute too. I guess final thing, I just wanted to, if you're comfortable with closing it up or wrapping, I think we've been going here for a bit over an hour.
Yeah.
Just want to show this sick shirt that Hayden just randomly gave to me when I met up with him in a parking lot at like 6:30 a.m.
Yes.
So for Western States this year, I'm not sure if it was Hoka or who it was. I don't know if it was Western States themselves, but they made shirts for some of the athletes, and it says Hayden Hawks and the Hit and Splits, like it's like a band tee almost, where he's got like the cowboy hat on, the Hoka shirt, the guitar, and then like it shows like the different like aid stations on the horse.
Oh, that's so cool.
Live at Western States.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I mean, I assume he gave it to me because it's a large, and not many runners are large, so he's probably not going to give it to any other athletes out there. But yeah, I think it's that's
cool.
It's a family heirloom for sure now.
Where can people, if they want to get in contact with Coach Hayden, how can they?
Yeah. He has an email address that I can put in the show notes or something after, but I assume you'd be able to find it on his Instagram or Hawks Running. I think he has a website that, if you're interested, I'm not sure like what his capacity to taking on new clients is, but if he has the openings, I think it's something that definitely at least to explore and to, get a phone call with him if you think that your goals can align with what he's able to provide. It's hawksrunning.com.
Okay.
And then there's I think he has an email address somewhere. So, yeah.
Sweet.
Yes, sir. Episode 2 in the books.
Episode 2. Thanks for listening.
Go.